What's up guys, Moonman here. Today I'm near Bridgeport, Alabama to check out the Russell Cave National Monument. Russell Cave has over, I think it's like 10,000 years of documented human existence in this cave. And while you cannot go in the cave, you can see it. And we can go see the artifacts from the cave. They recently, this past weekend, opened up their visitor center that's been closed for remodeling for quite a while. And I've been wanting to come here for a minute. So let's do it. All right, and here's the welcome center. By the way, this entire facility is free. I think that we'll have some things for sale, but other than that, it's free. So yeah, like I was saying, this was 12,000 years unearthed. The first investigators of the cave were actually Paul Brown and Oscar Ridley, the landowner, and they actually incorporated these guys to help excavate, and they dug the pits, and they found some artifacts dating back to over 10,500 years. Now, like I said, it is a National Park Service owned. It's a national monument. It was bought by the Ridley family who lived here. This is the same year President John F. Kennedy signed it in 1961. Signed the Antiquities Act to establish Russell Cave as a national monument on May the 11th. And here is a little picture of the visitor center that we're in right now. Here's a list of some of the things they found that date to this period in the cave, including teeth from a peccary. A little recreation of tools that they have recovered from the cave, or tools that were used by people who would have potentially lived in the cave at some point. Pretty cool. After reading some of this about the different landowners, John Wood was the first. James Duran owned it at some point too. Thomas Russell, he is probably who it's named after. He was in the Revolutionary War. But then eventually, when the Ridleys, Oscar Ridley owned it, it's rumored that the local church over there actually did picnics and dances inside the cave. It's pretty interesting. Here's some tools used in lacrosse and a game called Chunky. There, I think there's some kind of lookout thing over there, but there's some damage on there. Moonman doesn't know if he should do it. All right, so you guys know me, you know I went over it anyway. But let's go see what this leads to. All right, approaching some sort of overlook. I don't believe it's looking in the cave, but down there is some water and some rocks. It actually looks like the rocks have fell. It's interesting. And guys, we're actually looking at a sinkhole. Jeez. There's a little 5-line skinker of some kind of species of skink. Look at him. I ain't gonna hurt you, buddy. Came across a little more damage. Matter of fact, this little section is actually sectioned off. I did read about it on the National Park Service that some damage and flooding has caused this to be off. So we need to go the other way so we can get close to the cave. So here's a mouth part of the cave from the blocked off way. We're gonna actually probably get over there closer, but you actually cannot go inside the cave fully because it is an archaeological dig site. And also there's about 40 bats remaining in there, and white nose syndrome, the white nose disease on the bats, has really taken effect on these bats. So you cannot go in there, but we're gonna go get as close as we can. Look at the water coming out there, leading into that part of the cave right there. I can already feel the cold temperature. Now, like I said, stuff dates back to 12,000 years of human life here. Potentially even longer, because some fossils, the dates could not be verified on those. But they have found over 30 human remains in here, and the oldest ones being over 8,000 years old. The water has like a strange bluish tint that's not really translating well on camera, but it's pretty cool. Now this is talking about there's 14,000 acres of land drains into the cave due to water flowing. Just a few inches of rain causes several feet to rise in the cave. And it's saying here about trash that's alongside roadways and everywhere. It doesn't really go away. It just gets relocated, oftentimes found in the cave. This really big rock that hangs right by the cave. I love it. I was saying here, during this Paleo-Indian period, the first inhabitants of Russell Cave came here because there was a collapse in the cavern, a collapse from the cavern roof, and deposits from silt from flooding actually raised the floor here above flood level. So they were able to stay here in this part of the cave without getting flooded out, because it floods rapidly. So This is probably the first place that they ever camped, and you can see there's actually an archaeological dig site part going on right there. So they found some of those fossils and things they had found were found right here in this section of the cave. It says at times this was probably used intermittently. At times it might have been used as semi-permanent. It says it might have even been used as a hunting camp or a trading post at certain points. They actually found imprints of what they believe were baskets being woven, imprints of baskets, to suggest that they probably did stay here for long enough to set up shop for a bit. And the cave is larger than this, obviously. This is just the mouth part where people would probably mostly step to. But the cave over on that side actually extends way further, and you can actually see back there in the darkness it goes over that. But you see some rocks that have fallen down, and then there is where the archaeological dig site. But most of this section, I think, has been dug. I don't know if you see on camera, there's a little mist coming out of the cave. But there's some other people wanting to visit the cave, so we walked away from it there. But that was a pretty cool experience. To see something that people inhabited for 12,000 years is insane. And to add on to inhabitants being in the cave, another thing, I think you can actually see the haze on this point, but one of the many nicknames for Russell Cave is actually Caveman's Hangout. It's kind of cool. In the gift shop, picked up 2 merch items. I got a pin. It's got a guy with a spear hunting a deer in the cave, and a postcard of that hazy cave. You guys know I like to have pins on my hat, so I went ahead and put that one on there right next to my Fresno night crawlers. But anyways, that's the end here at the Russell Cave here in Bridgeport, Alabama. It was a cool experience. Realistically, the hike to the cave is only about 2 minutes long. There's a lot of good info here. They're going to have some permanent exhibits coming up next year in the visitor center. They said they worked on that visitor center for over 3 years before they were able to reopen it. It's a good experience. I could not recommend it more. It's another thing, like I say, that makes Alabama a very underrated and great state. And I'm glad you guys came along. So like, subscribe, and share. Moonman, he's out.